Good evening. Late in the evening, Fat Tuesday night, Mardi Gras Eve, where of course I'm stuck in Savannah in the garage, which is storming rain, and I am trying to concoct a plan. Actually, most of my life is just documenting as far as validating my existence of what I perception, because my intellectual capacities are called into question, because most notably because I am being cloistered. They're trying to shrink me down. I'm not allowed to think like a big person. I gotta be a fucking. I honestly think these psychopaths, which are benefiting from my stolen wallet while they are utilizing, and time is money laundering, and time does brainwash. So, by they're trying to shrink me down to where I'm not allowed the capacity for deep thought because there's a number of meanings or reasons, motives why, but for seemingly what's going on. So anything I sort of multiple dimensional perspectives of reality, most notably because I have assets to control and I am trying to control them, but I'm not allowed because other people are trying to utilize them. So they've got to discredit the source in order to maintain control of the mad money wallet, and therefore utilize different variations of the. It goes back to, like I said, it's blood. I honestly believe it has to do with blood doping transfusions, and they're playing this game of siphoning blood. It's like siphons, like vampire leeches. Vampires the glamorous way out of it. If they paid their fucking bill, it would be one thing. But instead, they just want to. I mean, they've screwed me so bad that I guess they really can't. I guess it's a bit too big a gamble. So I sit here documenting anything I see as far as, or my interpretations, and there is a lot. I mean, a ton and ton and ton of material as far as figuring what exactly might be able to. And but I'm utilized because I am not allowed to grow up and have an adult wallet. Therefore, the debts of my that I've accrued are utilized, and they've got to figure out, most notably my diploma, which is my, and I just so happened to graduate, and they had to trying to use against, like, the school I went to, mascot was a lion. Happened to be founded by a guy who graduated from Centenary College, which is in North Louisiana, one of the oldest liberal arts colleges west of the Mississippi. So, the guy and the guy Centenary is a Methodist college. Methodist deals with SMU, where my sister graduated from, also the debt bondage diploma to the same faction. And like I said, the mob uses clean handlers as an insertion plug into a massive pool. So it's like, well, it's a massive pool, and all they have to do is plug into it. Then it just extracts all the power with me and my sister. And there are different avenues of utilizing. My sister was actually used as a weapon to destroy the family. The things that she did were actually things that were detrimental to the estate, such as Nike. I'm a fan of sport. But the problem is I'm used in reverence to validate a lot of their major idols or their slave labor. So they throw me in and they can sell me on several fronts as either being reverent to teach the word of Jesus on one front, or codifying their idols utilization of cheap labor. So they're playing both sides where I'm paying both sides. So there's Nike, not necessarily would have been, like I said, my family, but it also gives Nike access to validation through my family's estate. But what can I do? Like I said, I've never made more than 25,000 a year. We're talking about hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars and billions of dollars here. So realistically, we're just pools of assets to be utilized. And they're trying to justify it like leases, oil leases. You can buy an oil lease real cheap, whatever you find. They knew what they had with us. It's night in Casablanca. I mean, literally, they knew it. I mean, it was a digging into a jewel vault. It really was. It was digging into a jewel vault. It was not just it was not crude material. I mean, there's a lot of crude attached, but they also wanted the Neiman Marcus and all these other things. So now SCAD could have turned around and been a benefit, and we could have built a bridge foundation because they have a campus in Lacoste and Hong Kong, but instead they wanted to screw me, and they decided to they wanted a skateboard park ramp. They wanted some. That's basically so. I've been a hostage here for years and years, wasting hugely valuable time because it's in the middle of a fucking bank robbery. It would be like, it's not. Well, literally, there are guns to heads and money being funneled out, money being siphoned out from one entity to the other. So they thought they were going to play the Texas side of the card. Texas is a big variable. It's got a lot of different things going on there. You never know which way. Well, what they want to do is, like I said, always, they want to destroy any muscle I have. And the way they're going to do that, and there was a book a friend of mine gave me when we were working at this place, Jumel's. I was bartender, he was chef. And this was a friend from way back that I had known since I was a small kid, the one we actually used to play Dungeons and Dragons with and all that. And he gave me a book by Stephen King called Skeleton Crew that actually had a story about a guy who gets trapped on a desert island. He's writing a journal about how he's starving, and then all of a sudden he has to eat himself, and so the journal ends with him eating himself, and he can't write the journal anymore. So that's kind of what has actually happened to me. Very similar principles. I actually gave that to a girl that used to work for me in Dallas, who I borrowed a bass from. Her name was Devin, and the Devin bass ended up with these guys from Arkansas and Oklahoma, Arlie, and that's the one whose father died while he was elk hunting, had a heart attack when I was in the house, and he got the news. I don't know if that was some sort of haunting circumstance, but that goes back to when I was so impoverished in Baton Rouge that I was just weak and vulnerable for so long. I mean, I could not afford anything. I couldn't afford rent. I mean, it was like, can I please sleep on? I mean, it was just pathetic. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, I literally went out every day and put in applications and got nothing. Forever and ever got nothing. They were trying to turn them against me. Baton Rouge needed to turn, and this is what happened. I think it started a chain reaction that sort of followed me around, even though it was also burning precious time, prime time, but they were also alienated because the group I was hanging out with had one guy from Houston. It was kind of like they were wildcatters, and it seemed more like a pipeline group. One was from Mississippi, from around where my family was from, the Beau Rivage, which had been. Now, I don't think the Beau Rivage had been built yet. It got built later on. But then there was one from Arkansas who had moved to Oklahoma. His father was in oil business, pipelines, I think, even. And they were all into musicians. But they knew a lot of people, and they knew a lot more people than I did. I mean, I learned a lot, but it could have been a great opportunity, but I was getting buried in my estimation. So it was more the alienation. I forget where I was going with this story. Oh, the bass. So I had a bass I had borrowed when I was living in Dallas with this girl who was she was a magnet arts from high school, and I ended up, one of the guys ended up with the bass because I had left it at their house, and we ended up moving, so I don't know where that bass is, but she got the Skeleton Crew book. I gave her that and a few other things, some books and some stuff. We were used to, art tutor was more of what it was. So, that seems to be how it is. I had to eat my or destroy my muscle, which I could have had if I would have shown up in Savannah. And everywhere I go, I can't afford to do anything. Therefore, I'm not able to develop any association. So then I get pissed off, and I'm trying to say, well, it just doesn't make any sense. But then again, I am a VIP whale, even though my wallet has been stolen. I mean, they should know that. Plus my sister married into a family, and it just shows the relationship of that sort of thing. They seem to be buying into the Texas side of it, even though I could have spun it with Texas real easily. But yeah, so it's real sketchy as all these strategy works out, because they could have helped me build a bridge and built a bridge to either Los Angeles or New York through New Orleans. But once again, nothing happened. So I'm stuck here documenting my plight, captivity here in the cellar with absolutely no help at all. I mean, it's beyond any comprehension. The only thing I can figure is they're trying. I don't understand why the infighting seems to be like the hardball, where they're infighting between families. Um, But the problem is we haven't even gotten into the game to where we can afford to have any contested things. And I appreciate it to a degree, but I'm just pissed at everything and everybody. So I apologize. I'm sure I'm just gonna. I mean, I have hunger pains because my plate is empty. Nothing. I eat, nothing happens. Everything I eat, like the Temple of the Dog song, stealing bread from the mouth of decadence. Even though I haven't been decadent in decades, but still, every part of food that goes onto my tongue gets extracted and taken somewhere else. I get no benefit from it. I'm shrunk down, unable to. Therefore, the mental proclivities of my acumen to relate to multiple dimensions of my being. See, all people are not different. That was the discrepancies that I have faced with psychological community in the past. I derive from a different place. I told him I'm a fiction writer working on various perspectives. Didn't matter. Obviously, it was a quack job being shot down. Once again, multiple reasons there. And obviously, time very beneficial. Prime time Deion Sanders getting KFC fried while people are getting fat, and they have on my diluted wallet. I think it goes into literally. I think it has a lot to do with the HFCS, high fructose corn syrup. I honestly think that's a big part of it because it goes into, and I supply. Well, like I said before, they're digging into the sugar bowl through me. I'm a pipeline converting sugar. The corn, there's got to be sweetness coming from somewhere. And the sugar would be then derived, transferred into, it's like you've got sweetness. You've got sugar on one side and you've got a lot of corn syrup. So they're transferring, there's a lot of sugar, but it's the math, you know what I mean? The percentages of sweetness. So how much sweetness is it getting? So my whole mentality is escapism. Every day, I think I could walk out the door. I'm ready to leave. If there was a phone call, I would be out the door on a jet somewhere, anywhere, going to talk to somebody with competence. Because I'm a quality. I'm above average. I could be a great, great writer if I had the but they don't care. I'm worth more as a siphon hostage, a lot more. So I'm not necessarily utilized in that capacity. I am therefore deviated to be a sucker, or they are suckering me with the siphon sort of mentality, but making me suck and blow and that sort of thing, and they're addicted like blow. So, hey, whatever seems to happen is I am documenting. And like I said, I wake up and I just can't figure out, because so many people know, obviously, or figure something out. There is so much evidence, so many patterns, so much gravitational, coincidental patterns of gravitational astronomical phenomenon that It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what I can anymore do. I mean, for years, this goes back to when I was in. It started when I didn't have internet. I had internet way back when, and then I didn't have internet again until when I was living in this house with, I started using this house with all these musicians that were from Arkansas and Mississippi and Oklahoma and Texas. And I got some jobs online. You know, I used to use it for that sort of stuff, but I didn't get into the research. Then I got my first computer after I got my job in Jackson, Wyoming, because I could afford to buy one. And of course, I had to sell it for a bus ticket because I was being, I didn't have any choice. And then that was my trip to Aspen. I had to sell the only new computer I ever bought for myself. Anything I buy for myself, I lose. I have to be fed like a goddamn slave dog. No pride at all. My masters beat me. I think there is a ploy. Anything that I provide for myself is taken away. It's got to be given to me, It's that sort of crazy. These people are fucking nuts, out of their fucking mind. It's because they're worth so much and I'm worth so little, but they are desperately relying upon my stolen wallet. They can't conceive of the identity theft phenomenon of it's imposters for the most part. They're leapfrogs jumping rank. I provide high value penthouse keys, and they hate that fact. So they sell the keys, and they've got to humiliate me to beautify them. Then it just goes and goes, and the longer it goes, the worse it gets. It's this avalanche sort of mentality. So yeah, like I said, I bought a computer. I had internet. It was not a nice place. I lived with a guy from Boston who said he didn't want to be friends. We just lived in a room next to each other at a 2-bedroom downstairs. Well, when I got fired from Jackson the Jackson Lake Lodge, and it was the middle of the peak of the season. I think I had like $2,500. I didn't have a car. So I take a bus into town, and the only hotel I could find was like $100 a night. I'm getting a suite, and I'm asking the guy at the front desk, and this guy I meet is at the front desk, who's kind of knows him, and he's staying in his car some, and we ended up talking. He was looking for a place to live. It was he seemed like, he worked at a hotel as at the Wart as a bellman. And so, I had no other choices because I didn't know where else to go. You got to Jackson doesn't even have bus services anywhere out of there. You have to go all the way to Idaho or something. So, I was going to look. So we finally found a place. It was downstairs. It was just been renovated. It was actually very nice, about half a mile, about 3 or 4 blocks from downtown. I think it was $800 a month. And jobs were easy. I found 2 jobs within a matter of days, and then got a job managing a restaurant a month into that. And but the apartments were nowhere. There were no apartments. So we found this downstairs. There was a Mexican family upstairs. They used to play several families. So we were living in the basement. And there's 2 rooms, and we never even used the den. We didn't even have anything in the den. He had his skis and bikes and things like that. He had 7 pairs of. He skied all the time, every day. Even he used to hike the pass to ski, and rode his bike. And he had 7 pairs of ultra nice skis and a few really nice bikes. And so that's what the den was. So this room I got a laptop with internet, and it was just basically a bed downstairs in this basement, and it was cold. Jackson is really, really cold. I remember walking home from the Cadillac, and I used to get off at 12, and I had to walk home 3 or 4 blocks. It was cold, and it was 20 below a lot of the time. Jackson is a really cold place. And so it was not, I mean, it was very hospitable, even though I'm living in a basement, basically about 15 feet by 15 feet, but I had cable vision, and for me, after as bad as I had had it for several years with no cable, no internet, I had a computer, so I started feeling around what was going on the internet because I hadn't been really involved in what was going on in many, many years. So I started discovering things, and then I had a lot of my material. I knew I had to figure out a way to become an artist. I had to try to escape because Louisiana kept burying me. I'd been a local celebrity on certain capacities in Dallas because of where I was, a very high profile area. And in New Orleans, when I had a girlfriend, and I kind of got known in certain circles and clubs and things like that, but I never could do anything with it. So I was known commodity in certain realms and circles, but I couldn't. And so I had to figure out a way to develop this. So I started a letter writing campaign. I tried to get agents. That's when I started sending a bunch of letters. I had found this website that has every email address for every agent in Hollywood and New York. So I started sending letters and stuff, and I really didn't have a lot of finished material, and I was actually writing some finished material, and I always have trouble and I would send, like, I can do 10, 20 pages, but I got nothing. Stonewalled nothing, absolutely. Then I had come up with it before, but I started doing this publicity campaign for a Wonder of the World dedicated to the arts, which was going to be this university sort of thing and it was going to have a philosophical council to inspire and try to elevate populations around the world through inspirational sorts of things. I mean, it really has potential to do something, but it was an altruistic idea to hopefully serve several purposes, hopefully open some doors, and gain me some artistic credibility, and it really could have helped the world out because it would have tried to not contain, but it would have been a massive undertaking. I mean, it would have been like a monstrous, I mean, I had a lot of different ideas on different ways to do this. So that's when I started circulating this. I didn't really have any friends or anything like that. Oh, but that was the first time I got online. So then when I had to sell that computer after I got knocked down, I had that computer all the way through Crested Butte, had website in Crested Butte. Then when I got fired, I had that moved to Asheville when I got stranded. My only thing I could do was pawn my laptop for like $300 or $400, and I had bought it for like $800 or $900. But I mean, still. So I've got $200 or $400 from that. I had a paycheck, and then I took a Greyhound from Asheville, North Carolina, all the way to Aspen. I remember on that bus, it was so bad because I couldn't afford food because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a place in a hostel. So I was like, and then I was like, go to a McDonald's and I would eat 2 apple pies and an ice cream cone for or like $2 or something like that. Or I got bread and sandwich meat, and that was about it, all the way across the country. So then I had to take a taxi in Aspen. It was terrible. One of the worst experiences of my life. But, I mean, that's all I could do. It worked out. I got a job almost immediately, thankfully. I mean, I bitch about Aspen, but as far as as terrible a life as I've had, the problem with Aspen was I had like 2 years of nothing surrounded by kind of something. So I had basically 2 years of absolute nothing surrounded by, and I was getting screwed by the pets and the kids. And the country club law had no idea, or they did nothing. Because I sent letters to all sorts of people, the paper, to the Aspen Ski Company wanting a meeting to have something, because I knew something was fishy. When I was working at Ben and Jerry's, that's when I used to stay in the store really late. After I closed, I would stay on the computer there really late, and I had a lot of time online. So I started a letter writing campaign to like the media. That website also had web addresses to like every newspaper in the country, the reporters, personal media. So I was sending out a lot. I started sending stuff to the United Nations. I mean, I was just, well, the problem is I had other, I mean, there was a lot of, like I said, I knew there were assets involved with me that were being manipulated, and I wasn't like a normal person because it connected to millions and billions of dollars of assets were being funneled through me, and I couldn't do anything about it. They just drilled right through me, and I got nothing. It was kind of like the Mississippi River. A lot of water comes through it. You don't really drink any of it. But other people utilize those liquid assets, but Louis is unable to utilize it. That's how I kind of felt. But there should have been a way to utilize it in some capacity. You know, there's a lot, water boy, that's where you get it. So now that I think they're utilizing it as liquefied natural gas, Mr. Deeds, because Mr. Deeds being capital, the land itself. So that's my interpretation. Because I can't do anything about it, that goes back to motivation for the quackery. The quackery being derived. And he can get away with it, but, I mean, because I was so beaten down that I mean, that's the problem. I look like any of those kids of parents. But the problem is I've uncovered so much more based upon this identity theft scam going on, and me being hacked into the HFCS pyramid, high fructose corn syrup converter. So I started writing a lot of letters then, and I kept thinking, even back then, I thought there's got to be something. I was hanging walls. I used to get in trouble with Mike for hanging walls on the signs. Signs on the wall. I was trying. I would put up these ridiculous things, like I had a drawing for like 7 million euros, just because I was hanging up signs dealing with Louisiana hedge fund, spelled HEADGE, Louis Co. Because I knew I was being coerced, COE. It had multiple meanings. David Allen Co. or coercion, or there's all sorts of things. But yeah, Louis Co. I called it, and I could have done something trying to build investments in some way. I mean, somebody had to be able to figure something to do. I mean, it's like being right there next to Crown Mountain. Literally, that's how I had that much potential, but nobody did anything other than just skiing over the top and didn't utilize any of the math. The math, with the exception of, but in actuality, I've been completely hollowed out to where I have nothing going on. So I was doing all this stuff, and I thought, well, I mean, I honestly thought I'll be honest with you. You get kind of, the media started playing with me, and I thought there's no way. I actually, but back then, believed that it was actually a free media that was a law-abiding free media. So obviously, everyone knew that there was going to be a economic catastrophe coming on in the immediate or near future, because it was 2006, 2007. So I was sending a bunch of emails. That's all I did. I would watch movies or send emails constantly. I used to wake up or just and just send just send as many emails to whoever, because I couldn't do anything. I mean, literally could not do anything, and I was obviously horrifically mismanaged. My family, it was something, I don't know. We had been brainwashed for so long to think we were something that we weren't, in order to be able to utilize our influence. They transferred. I found a building today called the Plaza Tower. 1969 it was built. It became the tallest building in the state of Louisiana, even surpassing the state capitol. And it was a 1001 Howard Street, right down the street from the Times-Picayune, right near the river, near the Superdome. It's and basically what happened though was that seems to be the TP, seems to be symbolic of myself. But it was horrifically mismanaged. It was gutted to where it had some state offices in it, got toxic mold and asbestos and all that sort of stuff. And so there, obviously, the asbestos would be the pyramid scheme, putting the best as the worst. That's horrific carcinogen, based upon, so anybody, because that's my interpretation of it at least. So the figuring out exactly what to do. So it seems to me they transferred transferred power or anything. They gutted me and moved it over to the Capital One Tower, which used to be Hibernia, and all that sort of thing. So seemingly they were transferring out of me into other buildings, and that building is basically I think right now it's up to our auction for like 250,000, or like the minimum price by this company in Connecticut, Plainfield, I think it is. That's just I don't know what there are ways to attach individuals to these buildings. I have figured that out, and it seems to me, PT Cruiser maybe, who knows? I don't know. And so, but it seems to me it got transferred. The family the assets got transferred into the Capital One building, previously the Hibernia Bank building. Or that's just a theoretical figuring. I'm trying to come up with theoretical plausibilities. When you gut something, you can transfer the value into another entity while keeping the shell there. And the One Shell Plaza happens to be the largest building in New Orleans and in the state of Louisiana. I don't even know what that's all about. Royal Dutch Shell deals with that's Dutch. I don't know what it. I know they have the Mars platform, which is the biggest oil platform in the Gulf. Mars platform. So I'm not rightly sure. So like I said, in Aspen, I ski a good bit when I didn't have anything else to do, like for a few hours a day. I was up for the most part by myself because I don't know why, for some reason, had trouble making friends. Well, people did know who I was. I was a known commodity from. What happened was in Jackson, I think the mob had arranged me to get married and have a kid with a girl from Connecticut who had family from Pennsylvania and Connecticut and Boston. And therefore, when I had the kid, I would have lost control of the kid, obviously, probably, or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it would have stayed held on or not. But for the most part, I just didn't have any control of anything and didn't want to get into that sort of situation. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Really didn't want to screw the girl over, to be quite honest with you, because she seemed to be a bit, I don't know. So it was, that was, her coming from I didn't want to screw her over. So I think the mob had set me up to do that. I think that's why I got fired. And I think that's why I moved in, because I moved in. It seems too structured. I know that's conspiratorial paranoia, but hey, it just seems to fit or some fathomable instant. So I think the mob had set me up to have a kid or get married because she had like a 5,000 square foot house on the Snake River, and I was living in a basement apartment and a one room, and so should have been a no-brainer, and especially since I hadn't dated anybody for like 4 or 5 years, and I'd just been really rung through the ringer, screwed. And then I lived next door to a girl from Rhode Island when the Red Sox had won the World Series and broke the curse. So I think I was supposed to have a kid there, but I was kind of apprehensive. I don't know. So I think when I didn't, though, the mob turned against me because they were definitely heavily influenced there were different factions of the mob. Obviously, the Louisiana mob had sold me out to factions of the northeastern mobs. There's different variations. There's mobs from New Jersey, and I'm talking about just parts of the collective. They not necessarily that when you think of like the Sopranos syndicate. Even though they do utilize them. So obviously there were some Boston and New York influences there and some California. So that followed me to Aspen. Obviously, that's where, in my estimation, it goes into Argo. because they're trying to cover their own ass for isolating and alienating me by codifying the Carter regime there with a little beautician for the hostage beautician, in my estimation, because that deals with that. Because definitely Boston's fingerprints were all over it, so they were trying to save their ass by getting Georgia involved in it, in my estimation. So by codifying the beautician, see, the mob figures ways to bribe politicians to allow them to keep their scams, their pimp games happening. That's what it's all about. It's pimps controlling the skirts, and I was a threat to that because if I wake up from my coma, obviously it changes the perimeter of the game, and they don't necessarily like change because they got control of the horses and that sort of the pimp games and all that sort of stuff. I think it does deal with the causality of pharmaceuticals and illegal drugs, and I think honestly we provide a lot to both sides, pharmaceuticals and illegal drugs, because it's derived dopamine from the pool of my bank assets, collective assets of the herd's dopamine supply. So I think it taps into that, honestly. I think it has something to do with that. Also, the causality, reactionary string theory physics of legal and illegal drugs. I supply energy and keys to the haps of the legal and illegal drugs through the people that are tied into my banking asset, the accounts. They're siphoning from the accounts. So I rubbed raw, obviously, when I got to Aspen. Then also, it was really screwy that when I got shot down, the Charlie Brown CB, and this explains it today, I learned. Today is Georgia Day, also. Fat Tuesday, Georgia Day, and the day that the Peanuts creator Charles Schulz died. And I always get the Charlie Brown mentality with Lucy pulling the ball away, the 5-cent psychiatrist mentality, quackery, and falling down and hitting your head. And obviously the CB Crested Butte, when I give up my apartment, which wasn't great, and I really didn't do anything in Jackson. So then I decided to move to Crested Butte, get there a week or two into the job. I get fired, splat. Then all my savings, which I had a few $1,000s, is dwindled down. And the only job I get is 3 mornings a week. I go in at 5 a.m. in the coldest county in the United States, Gunnison County, because of the high elevation. I mean, it was really, really cold. I did have face masks. I bought a lot of cold weather gear when I was in Jackson because it was so cold. So I wasn't bad. I had face masks. It wasn't terrible. One of those things where you could see kind of through there. And I skied a lot because I got a pass, and that's the only job I could get was like 15, 20 hours a week because I honestly think it had to do. Well, they didn't want me. If I would have gotten that job, I would have probably done really good there because I met the. I did all right. I did nothing to get fired. I know that for a fact. The only thing, there was a fire alarm where the sprinkler system went off, and it flooded the dining room a few days in. And I suggested several different things. I was like, well, we could call it. I was like, well, let's call it a carpet. I don't know. And I did a wine tasting where I didn't even drink the wine. I tasted it. I was trying to be so professional because I was in charge of. I built the wine list. I had. Done everything. I mean, the restaurant was already open. Then they just, about 2 days before we opened, they just called me in and said, we're going to let you go, that sort of thing. So I was just like, well, what do I do now? And I had moved into a company property that was owned by the company, which was a 3-bedroom apartment. They let me keep that. And, but the only job I could get was this about 15 hours a week, but I got a ski pass. So I skied. What else do you do? I mean, I was online. I kept trying to find jobs, and I was still writing. I had started writing letters to different people and didn't know what to do. So by the end of the season, I was dead broke. my mother flew me to Asheville and then ended up splatting there and ended up taking the bus back to Asheville. But if I would have kept the job, I would have gotten along good. There were I had met all the people that were going to work with me. I mean, it was a fun crew. I would have gotten along. I honestly think they wanted to alienate me from the guy who's fought one of the Air Force. There was an Air Force captain's son and his girlfriend. They were from Utah, and her father had actually gone to Goodfellow Air Force or worked at Goodfellow in Army Intelligence. Real nice. I mean, we got along great, but then we're getting along great. I mean, we went to dinner, before, and then when I got fired, it just changes things completely because then he's a manager in the company and I'm nothing. And then they had one other guy who worked in maintenance. And so I'm absolutely nothing in the company. I'm working like just a joke job, just so a ski pass. So then I look like a bum again. It goes back to that same mentality of alienation. So instead of building a good base in Colorado, meeting a bunch of people around there, so then I have nothing to do. I go out. I didn't go out at all. I mean, all I basically did was I would go to the grocery store and I cooked, and then we were just, it was terrible. So I don't know. It really screwed things up bad. So then that goes into the American Horror Story, in my estimation, of Jessica Lange. I don't know who had anything to do with it. Mountain was owned by the Mullers, which are from Northeast. They own a mountain in New Hampshire and Vermont. I think they're from Massachusetts. And one of the lady who fired me was actually from Minnesota, and there was one other lady who worked there who was from Vermont. And those were mostly the ones that I worked with. Another guy who had come with a co-manager from New Mexico. And that was about the extent of, I don't know who the chef was. So I don't know exactly who or what it was. So I could have gone I was planning on the whole time trying to move to Aspen. When I almost moved to Aspen from Jackson Hole, the only problem was finding a place to live was so difficult. So I could have at the end of the season had probably $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000 and moved over there. But I think, and it worked out right. I mean, the mob did they knew what they were doing. So instead, I ended up piss poor, penny poor, Golden Gopher piss poor, for Herky and Campbell, I guess. And living in a hostel, whereas if I would have had 7,000 or 8,000 or 9,000, I might not even gone to Aspen then, but I would have had options. But instead, I had no options at all. That's where it goes into it just got really bizarre. So I get the job and I'm sending letters all the time, and I just get frustrated because if I'm not developing socially in an area, and all I can do is try to escape, what do I do? So I'm not developing socially in the area. I'm not getting invited to parties. I'm not making friends. And I was honestly trying and asked, but I would go talk to people in stores all the time, all around, as part of my marketing campaign, as I told Mike. I used to go around and, I'd give them coupons, or I'd bring them these little trinkets, or I'd bring them some ice cream, different things. And I did this a lot to people, to meet people, plus also to try to develop a regular coffee and ice cream business. And it worked some, but not really much at all. And so I'm not developing socially. I really don't. The only thing, I'd gone to the bar, which is run by people from Boston, Eric's. So there's Boston people running the bar there, obviously, and I don't know what the deal is there, because, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on there. And the guy I was working for was from Boston, so it was really, really strange that I'm just not becoming friends or something like. When I was living in the hostel, there was a guy from Australia. There were people I roomed with. I had no money I couldn't go out with at all. Who I stayed with a few people, a guy from Australia and a guy from England. The guy from Australia, he was there like 2 weeks. I stayed with him. He met several people that he knew, one from New Zealand, one from Australia. He had a group of friends, and he had dated 2 girls, I think, by the time he left in like 2 or 3 weeks he was there. He did more in 2 or 3 weeks of being there than I did the entire year, a few years. I mean, literally. It was amazing. I don't think I had a date the entire 4 years I was in Aspen. Well, the problem was I don't go out. I'm not a very. It's very bizarre. I mean, I just didn't never meet anybody or anything like that. So I'm not developing socially, and I'm trying to launch myself via emails, via the newspapers and things like that, getting nowhere and nothing. And so then I decide I'm going to belly. I was kind of a belly flop. I had 7 or 8 thousand, a good amount of money. I had a place to live, so I was going to make a campaign and get. I had to, because I knew time is. I mean, I knew there was some business that needed to be done. So I get fired, kind of quick. Get fired by not. I did a bad job on purpose, and so I start a serious letter writing campaign to the media, to all sorts of media across the board. That's all I did all day and get nothing. I mean, nothing. Literally nothing. That's when the market started tanking. Then I just run out of money. Spent all my money. I got nothing. And end up starting again. And it's, I mean, not, and so that's kind of how I am now. I mean, what do? Now I know for a fact. For a long time, I used Facebook because I knew people could see, because I was posting this evidence online to the different. Now they've blocked me to where I can't do that. But Twitter, at least, I don't know. I know there's response, or it's like tips, but nobody's doing anything about it. So I'm obviously a non-entity here. So what do I do? That's my question, and has been my question all along. My plan was I wanted to start a bank. Was trying to save banking credibility. That's why I was trying to escape, because I had several plans. I didn't know I was. There were several things I wanted to do with Louisiana, develop businesses in Louisiana. I want to build Louisiana into more an international. See, the thing is, the people that are controlling Louisiana do not want it to strengthen, or they want to keep it as like they keep me as a slave. They like Louisiana it is, because Louisiana has the potential, the talent to build bridges, big bridges into trade in Latin America. But they want to keep Latin America disoriented so it's easy meat for the most part. And I wanted to build, I had tried several occasions to build trade routes between Veracruz, Mexico, and Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and Venezuela, several places in the Caribbean, and I can't do anything about it. So that's what I'm trying to get myself up to, where I can. I was going to use fame as a way to build a company, then build this trade empire because I started realizing we were a banking family, but our assets were instead of our assets were they were frozen assets for the most part. They were being utilized as crude or natural gas. I'm definitely a natural gas provider. I provide a lot of natural gas, and I get nothing. My pimps get paid somehow, and it's all based upon these intrusions by these handlers. These clean handlers are plugs and allow to drill, and that's what. And it's just horrific. I mean, I think they went a little bit overboard. So I'm trying to build a banking, and I'd come up with several different. I wanted to start some sort of a principality. I wanted a chain of principalities, sort of like banking institutions, to protect money pertaining to different, kind of like UAE. UAE was an example. Monaco was an example. I thought about turning Aspen into one of these principalities, and I wrote, or annexing, mostly for the international banking. That there would still be taxes derived from the state and national level. It would just have different variations upon, I don't know, that could be negotiated. There's a lot of land out there. That's one of the reasons also they don't want me free, because South America would be real easy to set up a banking principality. See, the system hates communists They hate principalities as much as they hate communists. They hate blood. I think it's really strange because you would think that the people who would want to help me would be the social set in the Hamptons, but they don't seem to figure that out. They want that's that kill 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 mentality because I was weak and vulnerable, instead of building the opportunity to utilize me as a bridge globally because of and I warned them. I said it's getting hot in this. It's the roof's on fire. You need to start planning something. And I had plans, but my plans would have been good. I wanted to build a ski resort on the Black Sea that had a luxury ski resort that was a banking principality. I'm trying to save my reputation as a banker because my assets have been so decimated. By forming a bank, I can assess the damages and try to repair some of the accounts for these international constituents that are utilizing me as an influence, such as whatever me. And this is all based upon theoretical, still to be derived. But for the most part, like I said, I was trying to start a bank. It was a strange sort of, but basically controlling assets, global assets is what I was looking at. And because I had been so screwed in the past, because I couldn't do anything, I was trying to save a little credibility, but I'm not allowed to because they want to continue. They're addicted to screwing me on these certain levels. So I had come up with ideas to build a ski resort with this sort of thing, maybe turn part. I was going to annex a part of New Orleans potentially and turn it into a very European-style principality that had a banking sector and several. There's a lot of, and these are all ideas, raw ideas that could be worked from different things. But there's all sorts of ways to do it. Or the Caribbean, South America, and I'm not talking about hiding money. I'm talking about actual trade, empire here, trade that goes on. I wanted to conduct trade, industrial trade. That's why I have been trying to work with Arab oil people and Asians, Chinese and Japanese, and Russian oil and different, but I'm not allowed that, that's varsity. I might see the whole mentality of that is they want to keep control of my wallet. So I've been trying to build industrial relations. I'm not talking about just hiding money. I'm talking about the bank would actually facilitate industrial trade dealing with oil and natural resources and different variations on that potential. That's one sector possible. So I'm not just talking about like a Cayman Island just hide money. This would actually be a place for transactions or things. And this is theoretical in estimation. But that's been my motive. But instead, not allowed. So, yeah, it's a reclamation project to save economic credibility based upon because we had established ourselves as could have been the bank for Latin America, trade between the United States, but instead they decided to bury us and bypass it and just chop off the head and make it some easy meat. And they're now going after tenderizing the meat right now. Louisiana, I think the crews lost just completely screwed up. Mardi Gras, it's that every man a king mentality. They got jealous, and we never did anything. We never beyond anything. So now you've got this every man a king mentality that is being used. It pisses off a lot of people because they, not only did they not develop they wanted gummy bears, but you're pissing off a lot of the people all around you. And so the crews really screwed up in my estimation. So you got a bunch of people in mass throwing out a bunch of junk who they really screwed. In my estimation, the crews, it's the country club law. The crews are the country club law in my same people as the country club. They're the ones that really screwed up in my estimation bad in this whole thing because they lost control of they wanted to be independent and emancipate themselves. And Louisiana is a map. Independence Tigers as a high school if they decided to be independent, that's the kind of that's the same reason that Baton Rouge High is the Bulldogs. If Baton Rouge controls LSU, which Baton Rouge controls LSU, if LSU is nothing more than Baton Rouge Extension College, then it's the Baton Rouge Bulldogs. It's not LSU Tigers. And that's basically what it is. Because, and you can, if you notice, Baton Rouge is different from Louisiana. It's the political machine. They hate the state, it seems to me. And so they are now aligning with the Georgia Bulldogs because it's bad. LSU is really because they screwed up so bad. Because they would not allow me to correct myself. And so the state of Louisiana is losing all that sort of thing. In New Orleans, I don't know. I guess I know a lot of people have animosity, and I pay for the animosity by doing absolutely nothing because of these these envious, greedy people, and so they make me pay. So it's like, yeah, like I said, I am occupied. My body is occupied, and other people are utilizing that. So all I can figure is trying an escape mechanism. So bad. I mean, even if I had 100 and 200, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm just kind of, it's just like I'm bewildered as to what to try and accomplish in order to escape to somewhere rather than, I mean, I've got to get something done. Most of my life is already over, and I've done nothing with it except pay and pay and pay for nothing. I mean, literally, they just kidnapped me. Well, what happened was, they really thought, I mean, I am supposed to be dead. People are really, the reason they're really, really mad at me is because I did not kill myself. Honestly. I mean, if you look at how bad my life was, and you can't even imagine. I mean, most of my years and years of nothingness living in New Orleans was living in a one-room hole, just watching a lot of TV and doing nothing by myself. I mean, just years and years of this. And I had, honestly, people are pissed because I did not kill myself. If I would have killed myself, they would have buried my family. And they, I mean, even, I have literally thrown tons and tons. They had a plan, obviously, to bury my family in place, but me out of the way. I at least am a figurehead speaking my interpretation of the truth. So, yeah, they would have buried my family and just used us as bank cards. The Capital One Tower, that's me, gutted, and they transferred all, and then they would have used us as the bank cards, therefore, to validate the scheme. And still, it would have done nothing. Louisiana is the big loser in all this, because Louisiana has been lost what it could have been. Because it could have been a global trade empire. But I don't know why Texas, I guess it's the flow of oil. I don't understand it. I mean, I don't understand. I guess it's because it doesn't make any sense. I know why Georgia hates Louisiana. It's because of the Baptists for the most part. Augusta, and obviously Georgia was set up to be something big. They're going to play the pink card, no doubt about it. Now that my sisters had, I'm sure they're going to, I don't know. They've had two girls. Oh, that's got to really hurt that they had two girls. They've got to hate that because they needed the boys because they could do an overthrow. But if they do the two, they really need to play the Arab card strong. And so they're going to have tough playing that and the China, the whole, because of, and that ties into the HFCS. Coca-Cola is their big thing, so I provide a lot. The Sugar Bowl has been transferred into the HFCS, the high fructose corn syrup, which runs through Cornell, and Michigan seems to produce a lot. And I dug up a lot from these. It's amazing. I don't know how it works. I just point out coincident patterns. I point out patterns. That's a pattern there, something interesting. And I'm trying to, that's what makes me confident is I am trying to validate my theories, but I'm not allowed to. All they do is they try to shut me up and gag me. That's all they want to. They just want to shut me up and gag me. I just want to validate my theories. That's all I try to do. I just want to figure out what I've got and validate it in some sort of way and try to make some money off it. There is so much data here. I mean, I could put a team of artists. I mean, I'm sitting next to a huge art school. Instead, they're going to be these little sly cats and think they're just picking, Like I said, that's one of the reasons I'm forced to document it, because it is obvious to those who know if you have a primer, it's like from the movie Contact. The movie Contact was really smart. I remember mentioning it to that girl. And when we were out on the Snake River, I remember Contact had a very influential part of my life because I always saw the astronomy there dealing with the likeness rights all the way back to Bad News Bears. I did see the Marx Brothers. I remember one day driving on Florida Boulevard in the Broadmoor Theater when I was young, had Marx Brothers duck soup when I was a kid. Now, that triggered my imagination. And there were a few things like that. But so Contact was big because I was always into astronomy a lot. Even though I didn't really, it didn't look like it, I had the ability to hide things. I would just completely forget about them, for the most part, and just notice and pick things up. But I could completely turn off consciously sectors of my thought patterns, even though I derived. I just go completely cold on certain sectors, completely turn it off. I've been able to do that on a lot of different factors my whole life. So yeah, Contact when it where was I going? Oh, I talked to this girl out on the Snake River about Contact because I figured that's when I had started trying to radio, like the SETI satellites radioing and trying to escape and figure out something and figure something out, because I had a good amount of clues, but I didn't have near what I have now. I mean, now I've dug up literally thousands and thousands of pages. I just had back then. The Tom Green was a big one. Friday Night Lights and Tom Green are huge. And, I mean, literally, Beavis and Butthead I started figuring out. They gave me a good amount, but yeah, Tom Green, it started really making me think everybody's all-American, and I didn't really put it together then because I was so overwhelmed with life itself, and I didn't really want to try to play. I never even used my name. I never even called myself Louis when I was at LSU, ever. That's the strange, I never used any of that. I was basically hidden most of the time I was there as just being another nothing. Or nobody, or just a normal person. So yeah, the Contact reference was always an interesting parameter of what I was trying to figure out as far as dissecting or understanding the whole big picture schematics of astronomy, which I had always had a clue about, but couldn't really do anything necessarily about it. So yeah, it's bizarre, but I really couldn't do anything about it. Obviously, well, Boeing, Washington State, I think, had something to do with Mariners, obviously. Mariners had a lot to do with it and all that sort of thing. So, my whole thing about Contact was the astronomical context of contacting somehow escapism. That's when I started recently. As soon as I got my computer, I first tried through the agency method, got nowhere. So then I started into the media, got nowhere. So I tried everything. So now it's a matter of just waiting until something happens. And the thing that's why it's this, anybody can get away with anything in America for the most part. There are so many angles to be screwed in America. All you have to do is get your key. My key, get your key. Once you get in there, you can figure a way to screw it. And then fame is so important, but I'm not allowed to validate my existence. I mean, I have so much depth and material here that it would just literally 50 years of a career I could have put together. But, I've just, my entire life is basically wasted on nothing. So, when history looks back, I will be regarded as one of the biggest, probably the biggest waste in the history of the world, without a doubt. After all I could have, I mean, it could have been a banking family, could have been a trade empire, could have turned Louisiana into an empire, could have been a huge artist, could have been, I mean, just so many different. I mean, I could have done. I actually have a very good musical ear. I can tell if the song's gonna be good. Honestly, I pick things. I have a really good ear for what is gonna be a good. What is a, I think will be a popular song. I mean, I'm not always right, but for the most part, I have a. I could have done any number of things. Production, I could have done, but nothing. Literally, my entire life is hostage. A living fucking statue. I mean, that is the one of the worst, the dumbest things in the history of the fucking world. I mean, literally, history will look back on this and say, "Are you?" I mean, with all that I've put online, if it ever, I mean, they're gonna, I mean, and we've got people. That's what I just can't understand. It's beyond any sort of that. Yeah, I don't even know what to do anymore. It's just beyond any. It's just escapism is my only method, and that's my motive.